wanted to start us out by confronting one of the most prevalent battles, I think, that are in this city, and it's the battle of belonging. We all know this battle, because it really doesn't matter if you've been in the city for 10 minutes or 10 years or your entire life. The city can be a lonely city. It can be a hard city to get connected in. And we all long for connection. We all long to be known. We want to carry a sense that, hey, we belong here. We're supposed to be here. But sometimes belonging seems so hard and elusive. However, I also believe that today specifically, there are very specific barriers to belonging at work. Many of them are heightened in New York, and they're working together, warring against us and our ability to belong. And they're barriers like this: individualism, exclusion, transiency, and pain intolerance. Sometimes I think just having the language, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on those, because for us, I think just having the language and the words sometimes can be really helpful in coming up against these things. Because we're not just individualized, but our culture is also very much excluded and divided. We've segregated our lives into social groups, and technology has really helped this be the case. So you come into a new city, right? And how do you get involved? I mean, it's not like there's this broad general group that you can just join to find your fit. Well, maybe Wellspring Church, but other than that, it's a lot harder to just really get involved and find a group. So what do, though? You tend to look for people who are like you or have interests and hobbies that are similar to yours. And if you find those people, that's great. But then you couple that with how time-strapped you realize you are in the city, and how you only have so much time for certain social activities, and you only have so much time to give to those people, and so you quickly find yourself reducing your circle of reference to people who are just like you, which then, of course, perpetuates the exclusionary aspect of our culture. Since there now is this appearance that you have to find your fit within these groups that are exclusive for you to be able to find your fit, if you don't actually find that, what do? You try to just fit in. You morph yourself or you bend yourself to try and be something less than your true self. You become less than authentic to try to fit into one of those groups. And guess what? That never leads to true belonging either. And then, of course, we have the barrier of transiency. Transiency has the ability to destroy any sense of belonging. And transiency in New York doesn't mean just leaving the city. It can be as simple as leaving an apartment or leaving a neighborhood. And the culture that we live in almost promotes transiency. As you become more successful, you should desire a different apartment. Perhaps you continue to develop, and that will take you to want to desire a better neighborhood. Perhaps that grows even more, and you want a little bit more space, and you want to own something, and that desire takes you out of the city. And sometimes it has nothing to do with desires. It's actually just the natural progression of your education or your career path. It might just be following the needs of your children. On some level, transiency is just a reality in our culture now. However, transiency is indeed a barrier to belonging, because it leads us to a place of not fully being invested in other people. We find ourselves asking somebody how long they're going to be around, and depending on their answer, we determine how much of ourselves emotionally we're going to invest in that person. What I want to point out, too, is that this transiency thing works both ways. So say you're the person that's not sure if you're going to stick around for very long. Maybe you're not exactly sure how this New York City thing is going to go. And so you yourself will not fully allow yourself to open up. You yourself find yourself holding back in social situations, on not going deep in friendships or within the church, and in getting involved with others and getting involved with your city. Because perhaps you're just one great job or one great interview or one great opportunity away from moving up and moving out yourself. Or maybe you're one bad experience, one more bad subway ride away from also moving out yourself. But you see, if we allow ourselves to just be led around by the culture of transiency, we'll constantly be battling feelings of loneliness and isolation, because we'll never allow ourselves to be known and we'll never fully know others. And at some point, we have to break this cycle and step into relationship. However, I think what we're going to find so freeing, and what I've found so freeing, is that looking at the person of Jesus, who is our teacher, Jesus, who is our model for life, is that he gives us a glimpse of a solution that is perhaps way more simple than we ever could imagine. One of the greatest things about this text, I think, and really about Jesus as a whole, is that so much of what he is doing in his ministry and here on earth centers around food. And I love food, and we all live in a great city to be able to enjoy fantastic and great food. I mean, who doesn't love good food, right? But this, of course, is a complex story. There's a lot of cultural ideals that are clashing here. But underneath it all, it really is essentially a story about Jesus and friends and food. Jesus spent a lot of time eating and drinking with the lost, and that's actually what his disciples are known for, those that are eating and drinking with the lost. The Gospels are full of stories of Jesus at a meal. I want to just look at Luke, because Luke's really great at pointing out these places. Luke 15, Jesus eats with tax collectors and sinners at the home of Levi. That's another account of the story we read today. Luke 7, Jesus is anointed at the home of Simon the Pharisee during a meal. Luke 9, Jesus feeds the 5,000. In Luke 10, Jesus eats in the home of Martha and Mary. In Luke 11, Jesus condemns the Pharisees and teachers of the law at a meal. In Luke 14, Jesus is at a meal when he urges people to invite the poor to their meals rather than their friends. In Luke 19, Jesus invites himself to dinner with Zacchaeus. In Luke 22, we have the account of the Last Supper. In Luke 24, the risen Christ has a meal with two disciples in Emmaus. And then later, he eats fish with his disciples on the beach in Jerusalem. New Testament scholar Robert Karras says, I love it, he goes, in Luke's gospel, Jesus is either going to meal, at a meal, or coming from a meal. See, in fact, apparently this happens so often that Jesus' enemies actually accuse him of being a glutton and a drunkard, which of course Jesus was not. But it does draw our attention, doesn't it, to the amount of time that Jesus spent in his ministry, which remember was only 3 years, the amount of time he spent eating and drinking with other people. He had 3 years to bring about the kingdom of heaven here on earth, and he spends an exorbitant amount of time eating and drinking with sinners. Church, this is the way of Jesus. I love how Tim Chester puts it. He says his mission strategy, thinking of Jesus here, was a long meal stretching into the evening. He did evangelism and discipleship round a table with some grilled fish, a loaf of bread, and a pitcher of wine. Therefore, church, if it is our desire to look and reflect the ministry of Jesus, we should be, at our core, looking for ways to expand our reach to welcome others in. If we want our lives to reflect the life and ministry of Jesus, we should be working and spending our time inviting others into a party and feasting with them. The Son of Man came eating and drinking. I truly believe there is nothing more impactful that any of you can do as a follower of Jesus, if you are claiming and wanting to be a follower of Jesus, than for you to open up your table, invite somebody to dinner, and have a meaningful conversation about life and faith.